Hey, what's good, self-direct investors? I hope you're all doing great, and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jordan. I'm the mind behind Make More Capital, and today we're coming at you with This Week in Cannabis News from May 2nd to the 8th. Now, before we jump in, if you enjoy this video or you learned something, please just leave a like on it as it really helps out my channel. And of course, if you want to learn how to take advantage of this generational investment opportunity, subscribe below so that you don't miss any future videos, but then there's plenty of content for you to go back, rewatch, and educate yourself with. I've tried to put all the news and facts in one place so that you can watch episodes over time to learn about the evolution of the industry, identify top companies that you keep seeing pop up, and take advantage whenever you feel ready if you wish to do so. We're going to start with some great news that we got out of New Mexico. As New Mexico launched their adult use program on April 1st and began legally supplying the demand a month ago, and I have no doubt that they're very happy with the results, as legal sales of cannabis for both medical and adult use opened in New Mexico on April 1, and the first month sales came close to 40 million as the state's Cannabis Control Division, which regulates production, manufacturing, and sales, reported the first month's figures Tuesday afternoon. Through April, licensed dispensaries in 40 New Mexican cities sold 39.4 million altogether, of which 22.1 million was for adult use and therefore taxable under the state's Cannabis Regulation Act. And so obviously a large driver of those adult use sales were from 420 as well, while sales of medical cannabis, which is exempt from taxes and requires enrollment in the state's medical cannabis program, amounted to 17.3 million for the month. And so there's more information down here just in terms of the breakdown of the sales if you wanted to pause to read. But happy to report a great first month out of New Mexico. Well, this one comes from MJ Biz Daily, as licensed cannabis sales in 2021 eclipsed the coffee giant Starbucks. So happy to report this, that cannabis sales were strong despite certain states that we expected to come online, like New Jersey, Connecticut, New York, not actually coming online. So despite that, we still saw strong growth, which means that those states will still be coming online and that we have yet to see the growth from these new states coming. And so obviously that means that cannabis sales will continue to grow. But happy to share that for years there's been a running joke in pop culture about a Starbucks on every corner, but that trope might need updating now that regulated cannabis sales in the US have outstripped the coffee giant's North American sales by at least a third, according to the 2022 MJ Biz Factbook. And so comparably, we've got legal recreational medical sales in 2021, 24.5 billion to 27 billion, surpassing Starbucks' North American sales of 20.5 billion. So and that's despite the fact that coffee can be sold in all 50 states, where cannabis can't. By contrast, only 39 states and the District of Columbia have legalized some form of cannabis. So despite those handcuffs and that obstacle, even the pace of growth from 2020 to 2021 landed in cannabis's favor, as Starbucks' annual revenue in North America grew 25% during the company's 2021 fiscal year. But by comparison, the cannabis industry saw sales climb 30% last year. And again, that is with many states that we expected to come online not actually coming online yet. So that means the growth is still to come. And so very happy to report that what seemed like a bit of a lull year, still plenty of growth for the cannabis industry. And so I wanted to jump over this one from New Cannabis Ventures, as March cannabis sales remained flat sequentially. This sounds less than impressive. It is worth noting that every single state did see much stronger sales in March as opposed to February. And as we just moved through April, April 20th is the strongest sales driver every year. And so I have no doubt that we will see a stronger April than March, and that will trend in the right direction, but we'll just have to wait until next month and see. And so I'm just going to go through the main snippet. Otherwise, you can pause to read for more details of the breakdown here. But so we start with Arizona. Combined sales of 111.7 million were up 50.3% compared to a year ago, when there were only medical cannabis sales in the BDSA database, and up 9.5% from February. And so if we look at California sales increased 9.5% sequentially to 282.8 million and dropped 18.9% compared to a year ago. And so you can pause to read for the rest of it, but I am curious to see how California does this April 4/20th. They do always seem to surprise us once in a while with a big jump in sales. 2 years ago it was in July, last year it was in April, and so we'll see just what this April brings for Cali. While in Colorado, sales grew 7.5% in March compared to February, dropping 19.1% from a year ago to 167.4 million. So while growth is slowing in Colorado, it's worth noting that it is the most mature market in the country as they enter into their 8th year of legally supplying adult use cannabis for its citizens. And so while we might not see another month like we did in July 2020, as stimulus checks help drive sales then, and unfortunately though we're seeing the unintended consequences of printing so much money, the good news is sales are still fairly strong in a state with just a population of 6 million people 8 years in. And so obviously Colorado is the blueprint for every other state. They legalize adult use and make it easy for the industry to thrive in the state. They're going to to see a lot of success and steady sales along the way. And so just wanted to share that. As we go to Nevada, one of the states having the more difficult time as travel is still just not up to where it was pre-pandemic levels, but sales increased 0.2% compared to February, falling 28.8% from a year ago to 59.9 million. So Nevada seems to be struggling a bit, but hopefully they can pick that back up, and I'm sure we'll see April sales bounce back. If we look at Oregon, sales in February grew 10.2% from February to 88.5 million, down 19.1% from a year ago. But good to see that jump back up from February as well. So you can pause to read if you want to get the rest of the breakdown there. When we look at Eastern markets, good to see that new states have actually been added. So we have Florida for the first time. Florida sales have been relatively steady over the past year. In March, they rose 10.3% from February to 177.2 million, up 19.9% from a year ago. And so you can pause to read the rest of the info. But nice to see Florida for the first time featured in new cannabis ventures from BDSA data. And so also, I don't think I even started this with that, but this is all BDSA data. That's where new cannabis ventures sources this from. As Illinois, we previously published data released by the state regarding the 12.5% growth in sales in March, which represented a 14.6% increase from February. And we did cover Illinois sales already when those numbers came out, I think, last week in May, but good to see that bouncing back from February as well. While in Maryland, sales expanded 9.6% from February to 44.9 million, down 6.4% from a year ago. Good to see sales bounce back from February in this medical-only state, and it's also worth noting that Maryland will put the question of legalization on the ballot in November. So citizens of Maryland will be able to vote for that, and so that's why sales have been fairly steady as opposed to Illinois or Arizona, where we see medical, and then boom, you add adult use, and the sales just, take off once that is unlocked. And so also worth noting, Florida is medical only as well, and so legalization is more likely down the road 2024 for this state. And so it's, again, one of many other states that will see reform at some point, but Florida's going to be very exciting because they've got a population of 20 million, plus they average about 100 million in tourists a year. So that'll be a massive driver of sales when that comes online. And again, this just adds to what we see launching this year: New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, and New Mexico. And so great to see the total addressable market just continue to unlock over time, while Massachusetts sales grew 1.6% from February and 14.6% compared to a year ago to 141.9 million, thanks to increasing flower sales in the state. And while this article would typically end at Massachusetts, with Florida, we've also got the chart for Michigan and Pennsylvania added. So happy to relay is Michigan BDSA estimated sales of 153.7 million, down 0.4% sequentially and up 3.5% from a year ago. And while the growth is lagging a little bit in Michigan, it is a much more competitive state as it's got an unlimited license structure. Therefore, it is keeping the prices low for consumers, which is a good thing. I am interested to see how April will bounce back, as it was a growth driver last year, increasing that trend into summer. And so hopefully we'll see the same thing for Michigan. Well, lastly, just wanted to add Pennsylvania, as sales grew 13.1% in March to 104 million, but down 2.8% compared to a year ago. But it's also worth noting Pennsylvania is a medical-only state, and much like Maryland, they will be putting the question of legalization on the 2020 ballot for voters. And I have no doubt that if Maryland and Pennsylvania both vote to legalize cannabis in November, that will be a big win for cannabis. And so all in all, despite Croptober, I do think the legal market still did fairly well, and it held up, and that's all we can really hope for through Q4 and Q1, as typically we see Q2 and Q3 into spring and summer as the strongest months for spending from consumers as well. So hopefully they can drive those sales back up into the right direction that we like to see. Breaking down Florida this past week, we got updates from the Office of Medical Cannabis Use. And so taking a look at dispensaries that opened up this past week from May 2nd to the 6th, we got 4 new dispensaries: Curaleaf opening 2, 1 in Bradentown, 1 in Englewood. We've got Move, owned by Verano, opening 1 in Fort Myers. And then Green Dragon, I do not know who owns this brand, but they opened up a new dispensary in Tampa. And so if we look at the qualified patient count, Florida added or increased their qualified patient count to 716,498, which represents an increase of 3,107 patients week over week, which is nice to see the growth continue in Florida. If we take a look at the dispensations from April 29th to May 5th, we can see all of the MSOs that operate in the state, how many dispensing locations they have open, and the number of milligrams of THC sold, milligrams of CBD sold, and ounces of smokable flower sold. And you can check week over week to see whether the MSO that you've invested in is either increasing or decreasing their market share. But also just wanted to make it easy for you, as Pierre Gilles does add this Florida THC market share comp sheet. And so you can take a look and see the breakdown. You don't have to punch the numbers, as Pierre Gilles has already done this for us, but taking all these numbers week over week, and we can see which MSOs are leading the charge in Florida. So Truly remains number 1, Curaleaf number 2, Verano number 3, Sorterra Wellness number 4, and Liberty Health Sciences number 5. And so on to some snippets. Thank you, Todd Harrison, for sharing this about safe banking. As cannabis crime wave boosts banking bidding prospects on Capitol Hill. Yes, it should, and happy that Politico Pro is reporting that, and Schumer is very well aware of this issue and that he should pass SAFE sooner than later, but it's ultimately up to him. So just happy to report that the pressure does seem to be building, even coming from Politico Pro. But on top of that, wanted to share some notes. So thank you, Todd, for sharing this from Isaac Boltansky on Safe Banking. Main quote, "We remain bullish on cannabis banking legislation becoming law in the second half of 2022. And so you can pause to read, but just going to read this main snippet highlighted here, or underlined, sorry. "Given the current legislative dynamics, we believe the path forward for federal cannabis legislation is unchanged, and we remain bullish on cannabis banking legislation becoming law in the second half of 2022 through either the China Competitive Package or the Annual Defense Bill." So while it is nice to see other analysts bullish that SAFE will pass in the second half of 2022, much like I am and much like you probably are, it is worth noting that this is speculation also. So don't take it as advice, but plan accordingly for your own situation. And obviously the best way to play this industry, I think, over time as a long-term investor and not a trader, is to plan for the worst and expect to be pleasantly surprised at some point. And so I wanted to share this one from Todd as well. This comes from AGP on Cannabis, and again, speculation, not advice, but they add, "While we await momentum at the federal level, state-by-state momentum appears ripe to provide multi-year catalysts for MSOs, including high-margin sales in the early years, as these markets will likely be supply constrained." And so you can pause to read for a bit more context behind that statement. So on to this one from the Hill. Happy to report this as momentum builds in Senate for major cannabis bill. And they're not talking the CAOA, actually, they're talking the Safe Banking Act. So this comes from May 4th. So happy to relay this, and so we get some context from senators. As the bottom line is that the banking bill's been out there for a long time. It's ready to go. It needs to pass. And Senator John Tester, who is a member of the conference committee, and so this is one lawmaker among many that will be fighting to keep SAFE in the final version of the America Competes Act and a co-sponsor of the Safe Banking Act, told the Hill. Now we got Senator Steve Daines, one of 9 Senate Republican co-sponsors of the bill, told the Hill that he thinks other Republicans could get behind the idea. And so this is sort of in line with what we said in the past few months, is that if SAFE were to be put for a vote in Congress right now, it would pass because it has the votes even from Republicans. So this is good to hear, as that is in line with what we've heard in the past few months saying that. We've got 9 Republican co-sponsors officially on it, close to 50 Democrats, Daines said. So there are some other Republicans that I'm confident, if we had a vote, would vote for it. So we've got the votes to pass the Safe Banking Act as a standalone if we'd like to. And so that is very positive. It's just up to Schumer to actually put that for a vote. We know that Schumer has been paid roughly $22,000, sadly just peanuts, to work for Big Pharma and delay this as long as possible and not work for the American people. And that's why we've seen nothing done as of now. And so that's where we sit. But again, hopefully, since time has changed and the problem that SAFE addresses has only exacerbated, hopefully we'll see some action taken on this from now until November. But conferees are expected to complete a compromise China competitiveness bill that could win the support of 60 senators before the August recess, when Congress shifts its focus to the November midterm elections and legislation shows to a crawl. And so while it's possible that SAFE can pass in the conference process, I just want to add this. Clearly, it's not aimed for passage this Congress if it's coming out in August. And so again, this is not about SAFE, actually. This is about Schumer unveiling his CAOA Act in August. So sorry, just wanted to add that context. Clearly, it's not aimed for passage. He's talking about CAOA from Stephen Hawkins, president of the U.S. Cannabis Council, an industry group referring to Schumer's bill. Even if it comes out sooner than that, it's too late in the calendar year. So what that means is we really have an open playing field to push for the passage of SAFE. And so I think that is positive. And so just to summarize, MJ Stock Trader shares a snippet from that article here, but he says it quite well. It looks like we possibly get Senator Schumer's CAOA and Competes finalized with or without SAFE by the August recess, which is August 8th. It seems at least 10 GOP members will vote for it, meaning SAFE could pass alone. And so what I get out of this is if SAFE does not make it in the America Competes Act, which, my gosh, I don't know why Schumer would pull it out at this point. Again, just clearly showing he's working for Big Pharma and not the will of the American people. Very disgraceful. Nonetheless, I do think this adds that if he does pull it out of America Competes for whatever reason, there's still a chance he could use that to gain votes and put it for a standalone vote after August 8th. So again, this is still speculation, but that's what I got out of this. So just wanted to share that if America Competes does fail, if he has the votes based on what the Hill article was saying, we could end up seeing a standalone vote for SAFE in Congress, from August 8th until November. As again, that would be good, headlines for the Democratic base to see that the Dems are actually doing something for cannabis, and that might help them try to drive votes in November. So just wanted to share that. Hopefully that wasn't too confusing, and I summarized that well enough. And so on to this one from MJ Stock Trader. Just wanted to share that yet again, no MSO redemptions, despite the difficult week that we've had. And I would say it's a difficult week for all industries in the entire market, but to see that on Friday, the market closes red and that MSOS closes green, I think that's a fairly good sign. As final update of the week for the Advisor Shares MSOS ETF, thank you, Jungle Java, for sharing this. And there were no changes changes made to the holdings for May 6, 2022. The cash position was $2.2 million versus $2.3 million the day before. And so another week of no outflows, which given the state of the market is a win in my opinion. I would say it also is a win. And so thank you for sharing this, Jungle Jav and MG Stock Trader. Well, a few more, thanks Todd Harrison, as states that legalize cannabis are bringing in more tax revenue in pot sales than alcohol. And this is across the board in most states. So happy to report that obviously the benefits of ending cannabis prohibition speak for themselves. A majority of states that legalize recreational cannabis, or that legalize recreational cannabis for recreational use, are collecting more tax revenue from pot sales than alcohol sales. And so you can grab this link below in the article here if you want to learn more about that. But again, just happy to relay so many benefits from ending cannabis prohibition, and we're finally starting to see the results of that. And it'd be great if more mainstream media outlets would pick this up and spread that awareness out there. Obviously they won't, so that's why we got to fight and spread the awareness ourselves, but nonetheless happy to report that. While Todd Harrison shares this one from Capital IQ, and it's mainly just a visual snippet, but it is highlighting the reality of US cannabis, as MSOs are not being valued on fundamentals. If you look at traditional CPG, where return on capital employed is a critical value driver, and so I'll just try to simplify this for you as much as possible and just show you what I get out of this. We look at traditional CPGs represented by the blue square and MSOs represented by the green triangle. And if we look at the average enterprise value divided by the next 12 months EBITDA, or earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization, and I believe this is based on current estimates, we can see that some MSOs are trading at a much lower valuation than others. And so I would say, just based on looking at this, you would get the best bang for your buck at these current valuations by investing in Verano, Cresco, or Trulieve, or Air Wellness, compared to Curaleaf, GTI, and TerraSend or Ascend Wellness, who are basically trading at double the average enterprise value divided by EBITDA multiple than these MSOs down here. And so obviously the lower the enterprise value divided by EBITDA, the more eventual upside once they do re-rate. Well, secondly, just to touch on the average return on capital, and this is my best interpretation, I could be wrong, so if I am, let me know in the comments, but from my understanding, L4Q, I think this is for the last quarter, and so if we look, we can see Trulieve is ahead of the pack for getting return on their capital employed so far, but I think the main reason why most of the traditional CPG companies seem to have much better percentage of return on capital employed than these MSOs is because these are much more mature companies that have invested in expansion in the past, and now they're reaping the benefits of investing properly and putting money in the right places where they're going to get a return on their investment. While these MSOs, for the most part, are still investing heavily in their businesses, trying to expand their footprint early on now while it's cheap, so that they can reap the benefits and rewards later. And so, while it does not look like they're getting a great return on capital employed now, I do think these MSOs, in time, as we move through the decade and as total addressable markets continue to reform their cannabis laws and expand, or I should say, states continue to reform their cannabis laws, therefore organically expanding the total addressable market, then we will end up seeing these MSOs get much better return on their capital employed. And so hopefully that wasn't too confusing, but let me know in the comments if I might have botched anything there. And so on to some MSO news, as Curaleaf expands retail presence in Florida with 3 new dispensaries. And as we did cover that, just to highlight that they announced on May 6th, they plan to open 3 new dispensaries in Florida. And so we only saw them opening 2 there, so it seems like there's the third one coming on. But over the coming weeks, Curaleaf's latest expansion will increase the company's retail footprint to 50 dispensaries in the Sunshine State and 133 locations nationwide. So you can learn more about these new openings. While on to Verano, as they open, they move Fort Myers Beach, company's 46th Florida location, and that was covered in this report from Florida. But just to highlight, as move Fort Myers Beach, the first medical cannabis dispensary to open within the Fort Myers Beach community. So if they're an exclusive dispensary in there, obviously that's a growth driver for Verano, is located at 11340 Summerlin Square Drive, situated off a busy thoroughfare that sees an average of 34,500 vehicles per day. Just highlighting that Verano does do a lot of research in trying to find the best locations where they're going to see as much volume and traffic as possible. Well, the Fort Myers area is a popular tourist destination that boasts nearly 4.6 million annual visitors, so I imagine some of them are going to get their medical cards, while Move Fort Myers Beach and the company's nearby Move Fort Myers Dispensary, located on Colonel Boulevard, both offer unparalleled patient convenience with drive-through shopping and pickup. So good to see Verano continuing to expand as well and trying to compete in Florida like Curaleaf and keep up with Trulieve as best as they can. Well, I just wanted to share a bit of snippets from the Green Thumb Industries reporting their first quarter 2022 financial results. And so again, for Croptober, and despite the difficulties from Q1 and Q4, sales were pretty strong and steady, so I'm happy to report that. And so I just wanted to show you a few things, because while I showed last week that Verano had quite a bit of goodwill, I also just want to show you that Green Thumb, also much like some of the other ones, also has some goodwill. But no reason to be concerned because they are much healthier fundamentally than the Canadian LPs, who had way more goodwill and had to write off billions in losses. I don't think these MSOs will have to write off billions in losses because I think some of their investments will, make a better return than a lot of the Canadian LPs ones did. But anyways, we'll get to that. Just wanted to share though, if we look at March 31st, so Q1 compared to Q4, we can see that the revenue was a little bit flat, 242 million down from 243 million. And so one thing I'm mainly looking for is to see, did their cost of goods sold go down? Unfortunately not. It did go up from 114.9 to 119.6. And it didn't go up by a whole lot. And so 5 million is pretty reasonable for that to go up, as obviously you do have to pay for whatever costs do come your way within the quarter. Their gross profit did suffer a little bit, down 122 million from 128 million. But nonetheless, I'm happy to report that here we can see their expenses. While they did not cut their cost of goods sold, they cut their selling, general, and administrative costs from 74 million to 68 million. So this, for the most part, offsets their cost of goods sold, increasing a little bit. And so nonetheless, leaving them with a total income, positive income from operations of 54.5 million, which is an increase from last quarter of 54.3 million. And so I think that's all Green Thumb can do to positively manage as much as possible. If it is a flat quarter, then just try to keep your costs down and keep that until you get New Jersey unlocking, and then all of these states that are coming in 2022. That will be the growth drivers that Green Thumb was waiting for, and they just didn't end up getting last year. And so again, while it didn't come last year, it will come at some point. And so with that said, they did have a positive 12 cents a share as well. So again, a profitable quarter for Green Thumb. How many companies are profitable like this, trading at such undervalued levels and with so much growth potential in the future? Not that many. Well, lastly, I did just want to contrast Green Thumb Industries' balance sheet with Verano's, because while I did share a snippet from MJ Stock Trader in my last video, and as a shareholder of Goodness Growth, which will convert to Verano, I wasn't too impressed to see that Verano has racked up a bunch of goodwill and intangible assets, equating up to 1.3 or 1.6 billion. And so I said that in my last video. I did just also wanted to share that it seems like Green Thumb Industries also, as they're doing many mergers and acquisitions, much like the other MSOs, have also racked up a good amount of intangible assets and goodwill. And so while it's not ideal to see, I just want to explain why it's not all bad and differentiate from the MSOs versus the LPs, right? And so while Green Thumb has roughly, we can add this up to about 1.2 or 1.3 billion as well. Main difference is that the MSOs, I believe, at least in my view, they're buying companies that do actually have a potential to grow in revenue and provide a good return on investments. Whereas the Canadian LPs, they overpaid for companies that were never going to make them, a return on investment in 2017 and 2018. I'm pretty sure they did that just to meet stock options. But that is why we saw Aurora, Canopy, Hexo, and all these companies write off so much in goodwill and intangible assets because they overpaid for so much that did not bring them nearly any revenue. And so why I think the MSOs will be different is because Canada has a population of less than California, whereas these MSOs are serving all of the U.S. and they're in many different states with footprints all over the place. And the U.S. obviously cumulatively has 330 million people. And so all that to say is that these MSOs, I believe, will be buying assets that will likely be able to provide a return on investment that, gives them revenues enough to offset some of these intangible assets and goodwill. And so while I'm saying that, we will just have to wait and see what happens in time. But so hopefully that made a bit of sense, just to highlight that, the Canadian LPs were buying awful companies that were never going to return or give them a return on investment. And that's why they had to write off so much in goodwill. But in time, it's possible that the assets that Green Thumb, Verano, and all the other MSOs bought, since they're actually providing, large populations in the U.S. and possibly new markets like New Jersey, New York, that will be growth drivers, California, for example, it just goes to show that in the coming years, they might be able to produce, or offset some of that revenue to pay this off so that they will not have to write off as much as the Canadian LPs. But so that's the point I was trying to make, just that MSOs are very different from LPs, and for that reason, in the future, MSOs might be writing off a lot less than the Canadian LPs did in the past. But one more differentiator to show you why Green Thumb Industries' balance sheet is nicer than Verano's, in my opinion, is that if we look at their cash and cash equivalents compared to total current liabilities, Green Thumb has 174.5 million in cash, while their total current liabilities is just 179.1 million. And so they could pay off basically all their total current liabilities for the next 12 months right now if they wanted to. Well, they'd have to sell roughly 5 million worth or a little bit more through other current assets, which they could easily do, probably 5 million worth of inventory. But nonetheless, just to highlight and compare that to Verano, which from my understanding, Verano had a lot more current liabilities than their current assets, or than their cash equivalent. And so all that means is that Verano is going to have to move some stuff around, maybe sell some current assets to pay off their current liabilities. But in terms of fundamentals, that is why I believe Green Thumb is healthier than Verano. That is just my opinion, and I could be wrong. And if you think I am, let me know in the comments why. And so on to a few other snippets. Thank you, Sayshu, for sharing your deep dive take on Green Thumb's Q1 2022 earnings. And so while I just do a simple walkthrough, Sayshu goes much deeper into a lot of the other numbers, especially if you are of a finance background or you like to get technical. And so you can grab the link below. Otherwise, you can just pause to read. So his takeaway from 1, 2, 3, and 4. and then A, B, C, and D, down to 5, A and B. And you can pause to read from 6 down to 8 and position. 9, you can pause to read down to interesting. And then again, down to end. And again, thank you, Sayshu, for sharing this with us so that we can compare this information with what we already know and try to make better investment decisions. While this one comes from MJ Stock Trader, I think relaying what Ben Kovler said on the conference call, which, again, this is just a bonus, a cherry on top with all the other states that are delayed but coming online soon, that rec sales in Rhode Island can start as early as October 2022. And while no one was expecting this, great, we'll take this. So a few more snippets out of states as Todd Harris ensures that 15,000 applications to sell cannabis in Connecticut were collected. And so I think that's a bullish sign that people want to legally supply the demand. 15,600 applications were submitted before this week's deadline for a chance to be awarded one of the first dozen licenses to open a retail cannabis shop in Connecticut. So I think the problem here is that you need to open, or you need to give out a lot more licenses if this many people want to properly supply the demand. So full article is here. You can grab the link below if you want to check that one out. But obviously, we do love to see this as people want to get the Connecticut market rolling sooner than later. While this one comes from Todd Harrison, thank you, Todd, sharing that Virginia Senate blocks the governor's attempt to recriminalize cannabis possession. So shame on you, Governor Glenn Youngkin, but thank you, Virginia Senate, for standing its ground for the people of Virginia. A year after Virginia legalized weed, the governor altered a bill intending to regulate THC edibles in an attempt to make cannabis possession illegal again. Ridiculous. And so you can grab the full link if you want below, or the article. Just wanted to share that, so thank you again, Virginia Senate, stepping in and saving the day. While this one from Todd Harrison, lastly, as California cannabis companies sell assets to narrow focus to save money. And it's so unfortunate and sadly a direct result from the government incompetence in California, as the industry has been asking for tax breaks and tax relief for years. And sadly, based on their actions, the California lawmakers show that they're not very business friendly and that they want to suffocate the industry as much as possible by letting the illegal market run rampant. Now, I do believe California will bounce back, as it's a very unique country and very unique state and unlike any others in the country. Just want to highlight, who do you think this hurts in the long run? Certainly not the MSOs. No, it's the small mom and pop businesses and the minority entrepreneurs that Schumer is hurting by delaying SAFE and making life harder and more expensive for all of them. So last few studies to highlight, over 50% of Canada's multiple sclerosis patients are using medical cannabis, study says. So happy to highlight, you can get more information about the context of the study, but the results, out of 344 patients who completed the survey, 215 or 64.5% said that they had tried medical cannabis at least once, and 180 or 52.3% said they were still using medical pot at the time of the study. And so that is the majority. So it seems like medical cannabis can help with multiple sclerosis. And additionally, researchers found that patients who had been diagnosed with more severe or progressive forms of MS were more likely to have tried medical pot, and just over 76%, that's a large majority, of those who had used cannabis said that they had bought it from a legal, reliable source. And so that's positive that obviously they're contributing to legal sales as opposed to illegal ones, but nonetheless just highlighting that cannabis is a medicine. We ought to deschedule it sooner than later, and once the US does that, the world will follow behind. And so I wanted to share this one from neuroscience.com. Whoops, why does that keep popping up? Just a quick summary, though. You can grab the link below if you want to read the whole thing, but this comes from May 5th. Summary: consuming cannabis buds can help provide relief from symptoms of fatigue, a new study reports. Those who smoked cannabis cigarettes found greater symptom relief than those who consumed cannabis via a pipe or vaporizer. Source comes from University of New Mexico, while researchers at the University of New Mexico have used a mobile software app to measure the effects of consuming different types of common and commercially available cannabis flower products on fatigue levels in real time. And so it's an interesting study as this is done through a mobile app and not sort of done the traditional route. However, as part of the study, researchers showed that over 91% of people in the study sample that use cannabis flower to treat fatigue reported symptom improvement. And so again, if 91% can report symptom improvement, it seems like this is an effective medicine that we ought to deschedule and give access to all Americans and everyone across the globe. And so lastly, just wanted to add, internationally, as German health minister gets behind expediting cannabis reform. And so while this is still early, all we have is this snippet here, but I'm happy to share, and so hopefully we'll get some updates for you that I can relay. But in a surprise announcement, the German health minister, SPD-affiliated Karl Lauterbach, has now thrown his weight behind a stepped-up schedule for cannabis legalization. Namely, he wants to put this on the summer legislative agenda rather than pushing it back to this fall or later, as had been widely rumored. So while this is great news, it is just talk as of right now. And so I will update you in the future if we get more progress on this, but just happy to relay that Germany does see this as a big opportunity, and maybe that's why they want to get this ball rolling. And so this could be a very unexpected catalyst that we were not anticipating. If we get this, plus imagine SAFE passing in the America Competes Act, holy crap. keep your eyes peeled for institutional money piling in if we were to get both of this heading into the election season. And that is it for today's episode, folks. I want to thank you so much for tuning in, and I really hope you got some value out of it. What did you think of the stories mentioned today? Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or suggestions, and I'd be happy to address them. But besides that, if you enjoyed this video and you learned something, please just leave a like on it. Subscribe below if you don't want to miss any future videos, and I will catch you on Wednesday for a midweek update in the world of cannabis. Have a great weekend, everybody.